Speedrunning is a process of erosion. Day to day, month after month, year over year, waves of runners and glitch hunters alike crash into a game's coast, attempting to claim more ground. Advancement on this front often seems glacial, as mere seconds get chipped off at a time. But progress is often non-linear, and with every collision, cracks start to form. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, a giant chunk of the cliffside will fall, and in response, the tides will rise. This is the story of one of those dramatic landslides, and how it rippled throughout the game for years to come. The story of Jak 3's invulnerability glitch. Our story begins during a period of glacial progress in early 2021. Runners at this time were attempting to squeeze every last second out of the game, as skip-wise it had been stagnant for some time. The any percent category felt as if it was almost completely solved. The last major discovery that resulted in a reroute happened over half a decade ago in 2015, when runner and relative newcomer Goofy discovered a route through the desert that could take you straight to the temple after beating the second mission of the game, where the previous routes already skipped all the way to Act 3 via temple skip. This and other minor time saves took the category down over 7 minutes to a 22:27 by the end of 2020. This was revolutionary for the game, but at the same time, it was a final nail in the coffin for some. The category had now eroded so far that a good chunk of the missions people loved were now gone, and only present in the multi-hour long all missions category. This is a common occurrence in speedrunning, when the natural path of entropy spreads a category so thin and short that some runners may feel as if the game is missing its core. The natural solution to this is to create a new category that serves as a time capsule, preserving that original appeal that now to some may be lacking. In most games, this takes the form of a very specific restriction, such as Mario 64's 70-star category, or the first Jak and Daxter's No Lava Tube Skip category. But interestingly, the community at the time decided on a more novel approach. Instead, they painted with a broad stroke, and outlawed the use of any out-of-bounds strategies. This would ensure that those now missing missions would be introduced back to a more accessible and shorter length category, while also introducing a new unique aspect to the routing to keep it fresh. With this new island to explore, runners flocked over in droves, and it became the most often recommended starting point for newcomers looking to dip their toes in Jak 3. But now, after years of steady improvements, another slow period had fallen on the game. That was until February 8th, 2021, when runner Nat Fletch posted a peculiar video. He was just walking on lava in the first mission of the game. After some back and forth, it was confirmed to be a new method to obtain the invulnerability glitch, and the first method that could be performed this early into the game. The previous methods were all extremely specific, usually involving interrupting a state change, like restarting mission on the same frame after blowing up a zoomer. Glitch hunters Tanman and Bloppy quickly noted this new method's potential for routing, but more testing needed to be performed, as a major side effect of the first form of this glitch was the inability to trigger cutscenes, which the 2 missions that took place in the arena at the start of the game needed to play to properly end. This testing, though, was halted somewhat due to the problem of its reproducibility. Nat Fletch was already only able to get it some of the time on the PS4 version of the game, and runners who overwhelmingly played on the original PS2 version seemingly couldn't replicate it at all. At the time, the discovery ended up falling into obscurity, due to this and the fact that most eyes were on 100% and the game's NG Plus category hero mode, as both were approaching major hour and minute barriers respectively. Only time would tell if it truly had potential. Later in the year, prolific glitch hunter Dex, who has found numerous time saves throughout the trilogy, would revisit the idea on July 9th, this time successfully recreating it on a PS2 emulator, meaning in theory, if it wasn't just some emulation quirk, the active runners on PS2 could eventually take advantage of it and start crafting routes. Though, unfortunately, it was still unknown what the requirements to get it were, as it seemed very specific or potentially even up to chance. A few theories at the time formed, mainly the idea that it could be tied to a specific camera state, though nothing was able to be confirmed, at least not yet. Once again, the unpredictability of the glitch and runners' inability to get it on PS2 hardware caused focus to shift back to other areas, but it was one step closer to potential progress and sparked some interest in trying to crack the game once more. On December 7th, 2021, Ricky would post a write-up about the potential major skips left to find in Jak 3, for both Any% and No Out of Bounds. Any%, despite already skipping 80% of the game by the 10-minute mark, had one glaringly obvious improvement to be made if you looked at it through the right lens. Paradoxically, the very thing that made the route as fast as it already was the very thing holding it back: roll jumping. You see, the main hurdle that blocks Jak's path to the temple is this tentacle, an example of the series' unique ways to make the ocean surrounding a level off limits. To bypass this tentacle, the current route took seemingly unoptimal lines through the desert. This route dodged some triggers that left the desert in a half-loaded state. In this state, near where a side mission is placed, the rocky coastline that led to the ocean was now missing. These rocks covered up a gap in the water volume for the ocean that Jak could now use to enter it from below, dodging the nav mesh for the tentacle enemy on the surface. From here, you could swim all the way over to where the islands normally lead, emerge from the water at a point where the nav mesh didn't reach, jump up, start making your way towards the temple, do a boosted uppercut across the waterfall leading to the temple, then head inside to perform temple skip to unlock the carrier to Haven City, where the final gauntlets of missions that lead to the end of the game lied. So if there was a faster alternative to this travel, we could save literal minutes. Ricky brought up a few ideas that resulted in dead ends before, like some way to unlock the vehicles in the garage early, or some kind of launch through the desert. The first mission of the game already had a massive vertical launch, so it wasn't completely out of the question, but both ideas seemed pretty far-fetched. There was also the possibility of a new percentage warp to a different mission in Spargus instead of the temple, or a viable method of completing the late game mission, Break Through Ruins, on foot, which was a skip proven theoretically possible by Dex earlier in the year, but currently the setup for it was too slow. No Out of Bounds had more potential for skips, since there were 40 minutes worth of missions to work with. The three main ideas Ricky proposed were an early temple entry after Destroy Eggs to skip the long drive back to the garage to enter the Dune Hopper, early eco mines during Light Jak Heal. Both missions brought you into the same room, one going along the bottom path and one going along the top, so there was some potential to trick the game there. And finally, a rescue seam warp during Light Jak Heal. Perhaps you could get the checkpoint up at the top to activate by first completing the Light Jak Heal mission and then somehow making your way back into the fence room. Once again, the potential of the invulnerability glitch to achieve one of these goals was brought up, sparking more interest in finally shaking up Any%. People started theorizing new potential methods for obtaining invuln, like restarting mission after a leaper starts drowning, similar to the zoomer restart method, but nothing was working. A week later, I would take a different approach and try to lab some way of clipping through the desert floor, to skip having to take the unoptimal lines to make your way under the ocean. I did end up finding a very inconsistent way to clip through, but it involved using the Tough Puppy vehicle, so there was no way it could even potentially be faster, due to the extra missions you needed to complete to unlock it. But it did get Dex thinking about Any% again. If there was a faster alternative to reaching the temple, there could also be some serious potential with the invulnerability glitch. Dex had already shown me the power of the glitch. Right before the year concluded, just over a week after Ricky's post, on December 15th, Dex dropped a bombshell discovery. He came bearing a full minute of time save. Dex's new route completely obsoleted the detour to skip the desert loading triggers. Utilizing the invulnerability glitch, he was able to take advantage of two main side effects during the roll jumping. One, while Jak is in the first state of the invulnerability glitch, the game considers him to be dead, and cause most enemies to completely ignore his presence, meaning the tentacle would never spawn, even when entering its nav mesh at the top of the ocean's water volume, letting him take a straight line towards the temple. And two, while the game considers Jak to be dead, he will be able to simply walk on water, as if he were that guy from that one book whose name escapes me right now. So on top of the more optimized lines through the desert, you could also punch and roll jump across the ocean, making the route even faster. The problem of viability, though, still limited invuln's potential. Currently, this route could only be done on the PS4 version of the game, where the first-person invuln method could be performed somewhat consistently. So without another new method or new understanding of how this invuln worked, it seemed unlikely that many would give it the time of day. Another prolific glitch hunter, Bobby Kaze, would attempt to get it on other versions of the game, only successfully proving it could be done on the Vita, which was a notorious port with massive frame rate issues, giving more evidence that perhaps it could actually be tied to lag. There was a good amount of interest in the route, but this restriction on viable versions would end up burying it, as focus turned back to no out of bounds. Until a few days later, when Nat Fletch stated something that, in hindsight, seemed pretty obvious. No out of bounds reroute possibly also? This revitalized the effort to obtain the glitch on PS2 hardware. Runner 6rock joked that the search for PS2 invuln begins. Well, at least the official canon one starts now. Minutes later, he would be proven right, as Ricky posted this baffling video.
Look, I fucking just got it on 50 Hz progressive scan. The PS2's on, there's the OSSC, this is on PS2. Look at the awful...
For those unaware, the 50 Hz progressive scan combination was already banned in speedruns due to a bizarre glitch that caused those two settings together to speed up the game by a good margin. So even if it did potentially increase the success rate of the invulnerability glitch, runners wouldn't be able to utilize it. So yet again, PS2 invuln seemed one tiny step away from viability. This discovery would cause a massive voice chat to form, with a ton of runners attempting to monkey typewriter their way into success. Eventually, some runners would get the glitch without the speed up, but nowhere near the already shaky consistency that the PS4 version had. The desperation for any possible slight increase in success rate got so intense that superstitions around various settings would start to form. The one that would stick via uncanny coincidence was surround sound German strats, which multiple runners claimed to switch to right before entering invuln, spawning one of the greatest Jack speedrun related images of all time. He switched to German. Unfortunately, the mania would die down, as outside of the meme, nothing seemed to be clicking, and Ricky would post a write-up of the night's findings. This did spark a bit of interest back into Any% though, as Goofy would pick up the sticks again and start chipping away at the category. And later Ricky and many others would continue focusing on taking No Oob down, chasing that 40-minute barrier, which would eventually be broken in 2022 thanks to two groundbreaking skips found just a week apart. One of which made the BTR on foot route viable, and another that skipped two whole phases of the precursor robot fight that ends off Act 1. The excitement that followed and the glitch hunting VC's pessimistic conclusion ended up burying Dex's route again, and it would remain that way for some time, until the end of 2022 in late November, when runner Aslov, who had previously gotten the Any% record in the same year, started experimenting with invuln on his PS4, with the goal of breaking the 21-minute barrier. He quickly found a pretty consistent spot to grab the first-person invuln, and got to work getting multiple paces going into temple skip. But because he wasn't used to the input lag from his HD TV, the limited analog directions on the port, the lag inherent to the PS4 version, and a trick required for temple skip being harder on the version, led the night of running to be a bust, and he quickly swapped back over to PS2 and nabbed the world record there 2 days later. It seemed as if the route was doomed to obscurity, and the runners were moving on. After the new year started, community member Mortis, looking to drive some more activity back into Jack 3, would start work organizing a community tournament, choosing the lesser ran but easy to get into race category All Missions Act 1. This tournament would end up achieving its goal, drawing in a good amount of signups and getting people to learn and grind the category in the months leading up to the main event. These semi-regular events on the Jack Speedruns channel are known for their chaotic nature, and this one was no different.
He turns around once he falls the first time?
Yeah, he's always walking backwards after he tumbles.
What? What?
Wait, what?
Huh?
Oh, no, you haven't
What
witnessed
is
this.
that? I've
He's not in the
never
car.
seen
Where is he?
that. He was like
Where's
in
he
the
at?
ground.
Oh, what the fuck?
Where is the sleeper going? Man,
Yeah,
was
fun
Ju-
fact, yeah. Okay,
Whoa! What?
nice. Okay, that was a rock. Yeah, cool. Alright, cool. That was actually really sick. That was good. Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That one usually hits me, and I don't know if that's RNG or movement related. I like to think it's RNG.
Wait,
Yeah.
my gun's gone. I got invul. I have invul 1.
What?
What? Wait. Hold up.
Whoa.
No way.
Actually, hold on. Can I bonk on something?
Wait, was that? A new method for obtaining invulnerability was found on May 15th, 2023. A random Friday, in the middle of a race, live on the Jack Speedruns channel by runner JP. Afterwards, the race partner Wotan was quickly able to recreate it somewhat consistently on PS2, proving its viability for runs and finally giving Dex's route the time to shine. All you needed to do was spin and press R1 to shoot the gun on the same frame you were hit by the lava to interrupt the damage animation from touching it, which you had the ability to do after the very first mission. Just one small accident out of nowhere broke the possibilities for Jak 3 wide open. Aslov immediately lowered the record by over 20 seconds on the same day, with a run that bled over 40 to forgetting to grab skull gems for BTR skip. The Mad Dash Gold Rush had just begun, and over the next few days, potentially the last 10-minute barrier for Jak 3 any percent was breached, with a 1955 on May 17th. Once again, the question of a potential for a no-oob reroute was brought up, but was quickly shut down again due to the fork-in-the-road nature of the mission tree. You could make it to Temple early, but you would still have to do Cave Skip and complete Destroy Eggs and Metalhead Nest to unlock Ashland's mission, get the jetboard, and move on to complete Monk Temple tests. So more puzzle pieces would need to fall into place if it were to even be theoretically useful. Despite Invuln seeming like a bust for the category, over the next few months, no-oob would see some drastic improvement. The category started at a 3840 by Goofy at the beginning of the year, and had been massively improved thanks to 3 major strats being discovered, eroding it down over 5 minutes to a 3303 by Dudek near the year's end. This amount of time save was completely unprecedented for the category. It took 6 whole years from the end of 2015 to the start of 2022 for that same amount of time to be saved. No-oob was eroding, and it was losing ground fast. Its future was uncertain, and it felt more fragile than ever before. A category once being explored for mere seconds of time save was now beginning to seem on the verge of something huge, but only time would tell. As the year drew to a close, people got busy with the holidays rolling around, and activity started to slow. That was until New Year's Eve of 2023. Less than an hour before the ball dropped, a message was sent in the Jak 3 channel. A YouTube link simply titled, Happy New Year's. This skip, later named Sugar-Free Temple Skip for reasons I will explain later, hinged on the invulnerability glitch, and a technique called side mission storage, which led to a very bizarre effect. For this skip, you needed to carry Invuln into the temple after roll jumping there, take fall damage to transition to the second state of Invuln that kept the inability to take damage, but made the game realize that you weren't actually dead. Climb halfway up the Monk Temple Tower and grab 4 skull gems to afford to start a side mission. Drive the Dune Hopper back out and grab 3 boosts from the Marauder cars that spawn in the desert. Activate the side mission and then restart mission from the pause menu, storing the side mission checkpoint for later. Perform Volcano Skip to get the car into the starting area of Temple for a ledge grab clip through the Temple entrance door. Then make it all the way to the end of Lightjack Heel, dodging the second to last cutscene trigger. Hit the ending cutscene to queue it up to play, then punch into the endless pit and die. Once you died and respawned, the cutscene would start playing, and give you the ending task needed to complete the mission. But once you skipped it, you will have spawned in the rotator room after dying. Now that you completed Lightjack Heel, the game no longer considered you to be on another temple mission, activating the checkpoint at the top of this room that you were only supposed to be able to hit during complete Monk Temple tests. Once you grabbed it and died, the path to the end of the mission will be loaded, which is where the sugar-free name comes from, as essentially it's a diet temple skip that takes you to the end of Act 1, rather than the start of Act 3 like the any percent variant. This completely shattered the mission order of the route. It was already thinning as Kangarats, Satellite, Glide to Volcano, and Volcano itself had been obsoleted. But now, Destroy Eggs in Cave and Defend Ashland had been routed out, and the start of a no out of bounds run was now the exact same as a full any percent run until you made your way to the temple, where they then forked off in different directions via the 2 different temple missions they each skipped to. Nintendo, Stellar, Usual, and I, over the course of the next year, would utilize this evolving new route to shave a staggering 6 minutes in the category, thanks to some optimizations for the skip from Runner TP. This skip would bring up some discussion of a no-oob classic category, but it wouldn't end up sticking partially due to the lower activity at the time. which was mostly due to Jak 1 and 2 now being released on the decompilation and PC port OpenGoal. Many runners were patiently waiting for Jak 3 to be finished and released before hopping back on. No Oob wasn't safe from here on out. Quite the opposite, in fact. At this point, it was clear that we were just one step away from any percent and no out of bounds converging, as there were plenty of theoretical ways to achieve a full temple skip without going out of bounds, but we were still missing a few pieces of the puzzle. Nintendo, who had found a good chunk of the skips that brought No Oob down to this point already, found one method for a warp to Act 3, but it wasn't viable for runs due to the lengthy setup needed. But we've seen how that story can play out in Jak 3. Once more pieces clicked, it could be over. On October 30th, 2024, one of those pieces was discovered. Invuln Anywhere. As powerful as the other method of gun invulnerability was, it could only be done in runs on the Spargus lava. But Ben tried spinning and shooting on the same frame she got hit by walking into the torches in Temple, specifically while only being at one hit remaining before death. After a bit of messing around, she would successfully obtain Invuln with this method, unlocking a huge new variety of routing possibilities. The next day, a message was sent in the Jak 3 channel, simply titled, Happy Halloween. This was that full temple skip, though with a catch. It utilized this new way to get Invuln on the finicky blades on the top of the rotator room. For this strat to save any significant amount of time, due to the other required setup for the trick, you would need to hit this Invuln first try, which may I remind you, is frame perfect. And on top of that, this version involved rapidly moving targets you would need to time your inputs with right as you collided with them. This route didn't end up seeing much interest from runners, as it seemed like way too much risk for the reward, only saving an estimated 45 seconds in the best case scenario. But it was clear No Oob was bound to break soon enough. On April 5th, 2025, Nintendo would discover the missing link, achieving a full warp to rescue Seam without going out of bounds, obsoleting the lengthy setup from the Halloween route, breaking off 4 more minutes of the category. Now when entering the temple after the roll jumping, runners needed to make their way up to the top of the tower, and restart mission while in the second state of Invuln. This would change their checkpoint to the bottom entrance to the temple. They then hit the cutscene trigger for the glider mission and died in the endless pit, similar to Sugar Free. This cutscene put the temple into a special load state, where all the collision and triggers were still active, but the actors and textures were deloaded, meaning once you respawned and skipped the cutscene, the door was now missing, and you could walk far enough in to grab the starting checkpoint, and die to respawn and load it in properly. Now that you were inside, you could take damage on the spiders and get Invuln again on the decorative torches on the walls of the staircase. Then make your way through the temple to the end of the rotator room and restart mission. This will update your tasks, aka the method that the game uses to track what mission you are on and how much of it you have completed. In this case, removing the starting task for the Lightjack heal mission, and because Invuln prevents us from dying and warping back to the beginning, you will now be in the same state that any percent runs went out of bounds to achieve. The checkpoint trigger at the top of the rotator room was active, and the door leading to the point where we warped to Act 3 was open. Once you made your way over, you could restart mission, make your way to the carrier, enter Haven City, and head into the final gauntlet of the game. This was No Out of Bounds' final form, the culmination of years worth of erosion, the very process that the category initially spawned from when it forked off from any percent all those years ago. The cycle had finally come to a close, and by the start of February 2026, any percent and No Out of Bounds were less than 3 minutes apart. A final time capsule route was created, setting the old mission order in stone, with the No Out of Bounds restricted subcategory being added to the main Jak 3 boards, that banned the usage of any form of temple skips, and laid out the specific missions in the route you needed to complete for a run of the category to be valid. This is the end of our story of how the invulnerability glitch broke Jak 3 speedrunning twice. Thanks for watching. This was a pretty tough video to work on. Being candid, I experienced a lot of self-doubt during this as my expectations for the project ballooned and my self-imposed deadline that I still ended up missing drew a bit closer. Even though I didn't fully realize my vision, I'm still happy with how it turned out, and it's been fun constantly tackling new genres and trying to improve my craft. Special thanks to everyone that's made it this far, and my supporters on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon who help make this possible. Specifically, Adam, SpaceJ76, Nintendo42, Chromosi25, That One Lombax, Rubix, Bargo34, Voldwand, Flying Body Symphony, Cheese Vivo, and Mortis Mint. If you want to support what I do and get access to a few behind the scenes in my Discord, please consider using one of those avenues. The next project is probably also going to be a bit of a departure from the normal explainers, but I'm still finalizing which one I want to work on, so stay tuned. One last thing before I let y'all go, I'm going to be running in the upcoming SGDQ 2026. I'm going to be playing the Half-Life conversion mod Gordon and Daxter on Tuesday, July 7th, right after midnight EST. There's a link in the description that converts to your time zone, and I'm super excited to showcase one of the pinnacles of the PC ports modding community. Shout out MFO for the amazing creation. That's all for now. Thank you again for the support lately, it's meant the world to me. More than I could ever really convey, to be honest. Hope life treats you to something nice soon. Later, y'all.